everyone, and welcome back. We're diving into something really interesting today, figuring out if the label bisexual fits, well, you.
It's a good one. Glad to be here.
I'm so glad you're here to help us unpack it all. We've got your personal stories and this article, Am I Bisexual? 10 Signs You Might Be, according to sexuality experts.
Lots to dig into.
Right. So it lists out these 10 signs, but before we get lost in the details, what's the core definition we're working with here? What is bisexuality, really?
So at its heart, bisexuality is about being attracted to more than one gender. But, and this is important, it's not about like checking boxes. It looks different for everyone because it's about how you experience it.
Okay, so it's about personal definition and lived experience, not some rigid checklist.
Exactly.
That makes a lot more sense. One of the signs the article mentioned is like these intense friendships. And honestly, that one made me think back to some of my own experiences,
Yeah, definitely.
What's the deeper meaning there, would you say?
Well, it's interesting, right? Many bisexual people, they look back and see these close, maybe even confusing friendships, especially from when they were younger, as like early signs of attraction.
Interesting.
It's like those feelings were always there, just maybe they weren't understood through the lens of romantic or sexual attraction yet.
Yeah, it's like society hands us this very limited script for how relationships should look.
Right.
Which can make it hard to even put a name to those feelings that fall outside those lines.
Exactly. And those societal norms we're talking about, they're often rooted in heteronormativity.
Yeah.
Which can make it even harder to process those feelings.
Heteronormativity. For those who might not be familiar, can you unpack that a bit?
Yeah, absolutely. Think of it like this invisible script that's always there that tells us being straight is the default.
Okay.
It's everywhere in media, family expectations, even just casual conversations, And it sort of subtly reinforces this idea that attraction should fit into this one specific mold.
And that can make it so tough for someone to even understand, let alone accept their own bisexuality.
Yeah, it creates this internal conflict where one part of your attraction might align with those norms, and then another part doesn't.
Right.
And that can lead to a lot of confusion, a lot of questioning.
Which actually the article lists as another sign of feeling confused about your attractions. I think we've all felt that to some degree, but it seems like it can be particularly intense for bisexual individuals.
It can, because it's not just, oh, I don't know who I'm attracted to. It's grappling with these external pressures, these internalized biases about what's acceptable.
Right.
And that can spiral into feeling like your current experiences, even if they're good in some ways, don't quite capture the full picture of what you desire.
It's like you're only living out half the story, and it's not even a story you consciously chose.
Right.
Which, this reminds me of another point the article made, that sometimes feeling drawn to queer storylines in books, movies, music, that could be a sign too. Like our subconscious is trying to tell us something.
It's possible. Those narratives can be a way of kind of exploring feelings that we might not feel ready to confront in our own lives yet.
It's like a safe space to kind of dip your toes in.
Exactly. A low-stakes way.
Yeah. And maybe, sometimes those stories can even give us the language to start to understand our own experiences.
Absolutely. Representation matters so much. It validates those feelings, and it shows us we're not alone.
We've got these societal pressures, internal confusion, maybe even a yearning for something more. It's a lot. And the article also gets into some of those harmful misconceptions about bisexuality. And I'll be honest, some of them were kind of shocking, even to me.
Yeah, it's really disheartening how much misinformation is out there and how deeply it can impact people.
For sure. Let's dive into those misconceptions when we come back after a quick break. So those misconceptions, there were a few in there that really stood out.
Yeah, there are some big ones.
Yeah.
I think one of the most pervasive is that bisexuality is just a phase or a stepping stone to being gay.
Right, like people can't really be attracted to more than one gender.
Right.
It's just the stop along the way to some other destination.
Exactly.
What would you say is the impact of that kind of thinking?
Well, it invalidates the identities and experiences of bisexual individuals. It tells them their feelings aren't real or valid,
Right.
which can lead to self-doubt, internalized biphobia, and make it really hard to form healthy relationships, both with themselves and with others.
It's like their whole identity is being questioned, dismissed as temporary, like you said.
Yeah.
And it feeds into this pressure to pick a side, which is so unnecessary.
Exactly. Bisexuality is a legitimate sexual orientation, full stop. And like any other identity, It's about self-discovery,
Mm.
embracing who you are,
Mm.
not conforming to some external timeline.
Absolutely. And while we're on the topic of debunking those myths, the article also mentioned that whole idea that, bisexual people are just attracted to everyone,
Okay.
or that they're somehow more prone to cheating, which is just like,
It's so damaging. And those are simply not grounded in reality. Bisexuality, like any other sexual orientation,
hmm
doesn't dictate your behavior or your capacity for commitment.
right. It's about attraction, not some lack of self-control or something.
Precisely. It's about who you're drawn to, romantically and sexually, and that can be as simple or as complex as anyone else's experience.
Okay, so we've talked about some signs of being bisexual, the societal pressures, and then like these really harmful misconceptions that are out there. For someone listening right now who's like, this is me, this is resonating, what's the takeaway? What can they do with this information?
That's the big question,
Yeah.
right? And I think the article has some really good advice. First and foremost, it emphasized self-validation.
Okay, so like accepting those feelings and experiences as valid, even if they don't fit neatly into a box.
Exactly. It's about honoring your own truth. And it's ongoing, it's a process, but it's a crucial step in understanding yourself better.
Yeah.
And remember, it's okay to not have all the answers right away.
It's a journey, not a race. And sometimes having support on that journey makes all the difference. The article mentioned finding community as a really helpful step. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, connecting with other bisexual individuals is so empowering. It can really help challenge those feelings of isolation that a lot of bisexual people feel,
Mm.
especially because of the stereotypes and misconceptions we've been talking about. It's a space to be seen, to be understood.
Totally. It's like finding your people,
Yes.
the people who just get it. And for those who, for whatever reason, aren't ready or able to find that community in person, the article also mentioned like online resources.
Yeah, online communities can be amazing,
Yeah.
especially if you're in an environment where you don't feel safe or comfortable being out.
Right.
Those spaces online can offer that sense of connection, provide information, and even just help you navigate coming out on your own terms when you're ready.
Because coming out, as the article said, is a deeply personal decision.
Absolutely.
And there's no right way to do it.
It's your story. You share it when and if you're ready.
Yeah, I love that. And even if coming out isn't on the table right now, that self-discovery, that journey is still so valuable.
So valuable.
Because understanding yourself better, that never hurt anybody. It can
Uh,
lead to more authentic connections, more fulfilling relationships, even if those relationships look different from what you expected.
right.
Speaking of relationships, the article also mentioned folks who might be in a relationship, maybe even a happy one, who are now questioning their sexuality, which, wow, that's got to be a lot to navigate.
It can be. The article really stressed open communication with your partner as being key.
Hmm.
But again, it's about honoring your own timeline and what feels safe for you.
Right, there's no need to rush into anything before you're ready.
Exactly.
And hey, sometimes that self-discovery can even strengthen existing relationships, even if it brings some unexpected changes.
Sure.
Okay, as we wrap up this part of our deep dive into bisexuality, there was one more point from the article I wanted to touch on. And it talked about the importance of unlearning those heteronormative biases that we were talking about earlier. It's so important.
It's so crucial to creating a more inclusive and understanding world for everyone,
Yeah.
but it feels like such a massive task. Like, where do you even begin? It feels like such a massive task. Unlearning those biases, where do you even begin?
It can be. Yeah, it can feel daunting. But the article had, it offered a really simple starting point, actually. Engage with more diverse media.
Okay, so like actively looking for those movies and books, shows, podcasts that showcase different kinds of relationships, identities, all of that.
Exactly. Yeah. Surround yourself with those positive, nuanced representations
Right.
of bisexuality and other identities that challenge those more limited narratives that we're used to.
It's like consciously choosing to rewrite that invisible script we were talking about.
Yes,
you know?
exactly. And I think the more you do that, the more those new perspectives become just part of how you see the world. It's not about, erasing everything you know overnight, but it's about making space for those new understandings. Yeah. Love that. It's about constantly learning and growing and challenging those old norms. For anyone listening who's feeling a little overwhelmed, remember, you don't have to do it all at once. Even just being aware of those biases is a huge step in the right direction.
Huge. Yeah, awareness is key.
Yeah.
It's really the foundation for change.
Wow, we covered so much ground today. It's really amazing how much there is to unpack about a single word?
It really is. It speaks to how personal and nuanced identity really is. There's no right answer. It's about finding what feels true and authentic for you.
Totally. And I think what really stuck with me was the idea that even if someone doesn't ultimately identify as bisexual, this kind of exploration, this willingness to question and learn, that's so valuable for anyone, really.
100%. Yeah. Understanding yourself better, embracing those complexities,
Yeah.
it makes all the difference in every relationship.
So for anyone listening who resonated with anything we talked about today, my challenge to you is this. What's one small step you can take to continue on that journey of self-discovery? Maybe it's seeking out a story that speaks to you, having an open conversation with a trusted friend, or even just taking some time to sit with your own thoughts and feelings. Whatever it is, know that you are not alone.
And be kind to yourself. Self-discovery it's a lifelong journey. It's about curiosity, compassion, and embracing the full spectrum of who you are.
Beautifully said. Until next time, keep exploring and happy diving.